The preseason test left no doubt. Red Bull had asserted their dominance on the track and they weren't slowing down anytime soon. The Austrian outfit was fired up and ready to take on all comers, even as they navigated through a number of challenges, from tweaking their car's configuration to managing the distribution of power over its future development. But the team was undeterred. Their engineers had been hard at work and they were confident that they had finally cracked the code that had been plaguing them for the past 2 seasons. With a new strategy in place, one that could work for both drivers, Red Bull was poised to unleash their full potential and take the racing world by storm. The start of the 2022 season saw both Red Bull cars vying for the top spot on the podium, but something strange happened after the Baku race. Perez's once fierce competitiveness seemed to vanish into thin air. It was as if Verstappen had absorbed all of Perez's mojo, leaving the Mexican driver floundered in a sea of mediocrity. Before this point, Perez had only really had to contend with the Ferrari drivers, and the Mercedes team had been no match for his skill behind the wheel. But as the season progressed, Perez found himself drifting further and further away from the car, struggling to keep up with the blistering pace set by his teammate. In a bid to salvage his season, Perez took to the public arena and called out the team for not building a car that suited his driving style. His words were clear and cutting. He demanded better, and he demanded it now. This is what he had to say. Certainly the car has become quicker from the beginning of the season, but certainly I'm not as comfortable as I was in the beginning of the season. The comfort of the car is something that I need to work on my side to make sure we are able to get the maximum out of the car. I really hope that from this weekend, Spa GP, we run the car slightly different so we are able to spot some differences that can come bring some performance on our side. Make no mistake about it, Red Bull wasn't about to bend over backwards just to please Perez. The truth is, the Mexican driver was fuming after the race because he felt like he'd been given a raw deal. Sure, he'd managed to qualify in second place, but when it came down to it, he finished in a whopping 17.8 seconds behind his teammate, who had started way down in 14th position. To add insult to injury, Helmut Marko himself took Perez to task for not managing to beat Sainz in Q3. Meanwhile, Verstappen was doing his usual thing and absolutely crushing it in qualifying, leaving the rest of the field in his dust by a margin of 6 or 7/10ths of a second. It's safe to say that Perez wasn't exactly feeling the love from his team at that point. It looks like the engineers at Red Bull may have finally cracked the code that's been plaguing Perez all season long. After struggling to keep up with Verstappen for months, the team is claiming to have found a solution that works for both drivers. And guess what? It's all thanks to the car's pesky understeer problem, which was caused by its overweight start to the season. But here's the twist. While the rest of the team was busy trying to shed the extra pounds, Perez actually thrived in the challenging conditions. As the RB18 shed the extra weight, the front end became more responsive, and Verstappen was able to take advantage of the car's newfound agility. It's almost as if the car was built for Perez all along. But don't tell that to Verstappen. Red Bull is well aware of this, and Helmut Marko discussed the one possible solution the team's engineer came up with for making the car comfortable for both drivers. Marko made the following statement regarding this topic. "We had a car last year that Checo did very well with in the beginning, and after it was developed, Max has been more and more happy. The difference is that Max loves a strong front end, really biting. Checo is a little different. He wants a bit more docile car. But we seem to have found a solution that allows both drivers to show their qualities." In addition, Perez has confirmed that he and the team are aiming for the same things, and that this is a good base to work from. In addition, he agreed that he and Verstappen are currently searching for the same things in the RB19 and that their driving styles might not be all that different in 2023. When comparing Verstappen to Perez, what is the most notable difference in driving style? And what does this mean for Red Bull's 2023 goals? In case you're not aware, Verstappen is a certified master at squeezing every last drop of potential out of a car with a jumpy rear end. But here's the kicker. He's not actually a fan of developing the car in this direction. Nope, he's been pretty vocal about the fact that Red Bull has a long-standing tradition of building cars with a strong front end. In other words, he's had to adapt his driving style to suit the car rather than the other way around. It's a bit of a head-scratcher really, but hey, don't take my word for it. Here's what the two-time world champion himself had to say on the matter. "I don't think it has necessarily suited my driving style. As a driver, you need to adapt to what you get, and that's also what I did when I joined Red Bull. The car was always like that, to be honest. It had a good front end, and I've never experienced a fast car with understeer in my life, in any category." Well, if you don't know what understeer and oversteering is, oversteer and understeer are frequently used terms in motor racing, especially Formula One. Even if the location and weather are different, this situation usually results in the vehicles losing traction with the road. Either the car's rear tires slip or the front ones. When turning in, oversteer occurs when the front of the car turns while the rear remains straight due to the lack of grip. The vehicle will typically snap to the side, requiring the driver to make a quick course correction. Understeer is the opposite of oversteer and occurs when the rear of the car turns while the front remains straight. Checo prefers understeering while Max prefers oversteering, and Red Bull is having issues balancing the car for both. You gotta remember, this is for the 2022 season, and boy oh boy, Red Bull is ready to shed some blood on that racetrack. They know what Verstappen wants and what Perez prefers, and they're gunning for that championship title. It's going to be tough for the other teams to even come close to challenging them if they manage to whip up a car that both drivers can compete in. But hold on, there's a risky move they're making here, and they better be damn aware of it. They don't want a repeat of the 2016 Mercedes fiasco happening in their own garage. That would be a total nightmare. So, what's the deal with Perez and his driving last week at Bahrain? It seems like he's not too keen on blaming his team's choice for an understeering car as the main culprit for his performance. Instead, he's pointing the finger at Verstappen and his apparently magical ability to handle a more finicky rear end. Huh? Who would have thought? It's all quite intriguing and perplexing. I'd say that there were very few drivers that like understeer. I think there's not many drivers that like it. And so, from my point of view, Max is able to cope with a less stable rear end than I am able to cope with it. At the end of the day, we both want a good front end. It's just a question of how stable the rear end can be. And certainly, Max has been able to cope with a looser rear end. We've all been led to believe that Perez is just not on the same level as Verstappen, right? But maybe that's not entirely true. Turns out, the car that Perez was given in the past may have been holding him back. In the first few races of this season, he was actually pretty darn good, even giving Verstappen a run for his money in terms of qualifying and race pace. So imagine what could happen if the team gave him a bit more love and attention, maybe even took some tips from Verstappen's setup and applied it to Perez's car. We could have a serious championship contender on our hands here. But wait, there's more. With other teams struggling to match Red Bull's pace, we could be looking at an epic showdown between these two drivers. Sure, Verstappen is an undeniable talent, but let's not count Perez out just yet. He's already talking about how he's not planning on playing second fiddle to anyone this season. Unfortunately, Red Bull team principal Horner seems to be downplaying the idea of a real battle between the two. He's quick to remind us that Verstappen is the #1 driver and Perez needs to respect that. But hey, at least the team is willing to make some adjustments to the car for Perez, right? They obviously see some value in him, even if it's not to the extent that he would like it to be. In the end, Red Bull is all about winning that Constructors' Championship, and they know that having a strong duo of drivers is key to that goal. Do you think that there will be a battle between the two Red Bulls, or will Max just breeze through the season? Let us know in the comments below.